Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Chatterbox with yours truly, King Jacob. And we are on this magnificent Monday, man, a mindful Monday, a Money Monday. And we have
Yes,
another special star-studded guest. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, King Jacob. How are you doing today?
Oh,
I know
blessed
we're
by the
we're
best.
talking at a distance, but that's a good thing. I love technology and how we can bring people close together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Blessed by the best, man. Always a blessing to be on this side of the dirt. So, we here, man. And we're going to get into your story. So, uh, before we get into the bulk of your story, the legacy chef,
Yeah,
Vicent Moore. Who would you say that fella is?
I'm sorry. What was that?
I said, who would you say the man Vicent Moore is?
Oh, well, usually I have no problems with talking about myself, but I would say um, I'm a culmination of both my parents, my friends, my life experiences, and the things that I do and serve in the actions that I make in my life. And all that's all defined through the influences of those relationships from my parents as well as my friends and also uh, just my own personal experiences in life. Um, I started off at a very young age. Both my parents are from New Orleans, and we say Nolans, but most people say New Orleans. And that Southern upbringing really tied in a lot of ethical hard work and honesty. Sometimes, that could get you in trouble, but at the same time, it's better to have an open heart and a sincere heart than one that's not. And so when you do think about or meet me, the first thing you're going to get is what you see. So Vicent Moore, part of my legacy is food, as well as music, as well as hard work and truthfulness in serving others. Those are the things that you'll probably find out the most about myself as we probably talk through and we go through and discuss some things about what I'm doing now.
Okay. So, cuisine, the art of music, mint, and meditation, all that.
Okay, that unfortunately, if you could repeat that back to me, it kind of lost in translation on myself there on this side.
Okay. I said food, cuisine, music, dedication, and commitment. That's you in a nutshell, correct?
Yeah, if you want to put it exactly like that, breaking it down, get right to the nitty gritty, that's pretty much will sum it up. Um,
Okay. So let's talk about your experience with food and why you love serving people and why cooking and serving and of course wine tasting makes you this world-renowned person that everybody loves.
well, it all started as far as the love for food wasn't an immediate thing. For me, started off as discipline at a very young age. I was pretty much a rebellious kid, and I did kind of got myself into a lot of different things at the early age of 5 and above, and my mom had a handful. And back in those days, mothers really took care of those things within the household, and they had their own routines. And little did I know that my family comes from a long line of uh, historically well known chefs in New Orleans. Back in those early days, I'm talking about early days, before the 60s. There's a lineage in my family of those that actually cooked in for other establishments, the main house, however you want to put it. And they would go in and do a lot of the cooking, and they became very legendary in what they did. And all those family recipes, Creole, Cajun, and all kinds of styles of chef culinary recipes were passed down from one generation to the next. And my grandfather was the #1 chef in New Orleans. He was the guy in the 50s and 60s that they would call in to come into these major hotels and different restaurants, and he would do his thing. And then he would leave, and then the residential chef would usually take the credit. So unfortunately, that was how it was back in those days. But all of that skill, all of that creativity was then passed on to his oldest daughter, and that was my mom. And through that brings to the story of the discipline. Whenever I was at a young age doing the wrong stuff, she gave me two choices. One, I could sit down to her soap opera time and listen to a series of soap operas. And if I fell asleep, ooh, you did not want to see that happen. And the other was I would come into the kitchen with her, and I would have to do the prep work, the cleaning, and whatever else she wanted me to do in the kitchen. So I made a quick decision. I said, I'm going to be a kitchen helper. And so that was the start of everything, learning about my family lineage on culinary, that it was more than just the foods we did, but it was also a whole connection of previous generations, as well as how to really create dishes out of nothing. And that became the start premise for myself in loving going into the kitchen, learning and creating different dishes, and being able to share that eventually with my family and friends. But that's a whole other story.
Hmm. And so with that being said, from a child, what was the most special dish for you to eat, and why did you love it so much?
Well, I couldn't get enough of grits. I tell you, I couldn't get
Okay.
enough of grits,
Okay.
and I couldn't get enough of shrimp. So those are my two favorite things I loved as a kid. And to combine them both, that was something that back in those days, that wasn't really an item that they served in restaurants or anywhere else. But down south, everybody knew that you could easily make shrimp and grits. You can combine different types of things within that. And so for myself personally at that time, which was in like the 70s, I was that was my two favorite things. And so I was challenged once I was elevated from kitchen helper to my mom saying, hey, make us something. And what that meant, my family, was I had to make a dish for all the rest of my brothers and sisters and my mom and my dad. And then that would be the Sunday dish. And that's what I would have to do. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to combine these two things. And she said, hey, create something. And that's what I did. I made my very first dish was with my family. And if you know about families, they can be pretty critical. You make one wrong dish, they're going to be talking about it for years later. I'm talking years later. And you could be 40 years old, 50, 60 years old, sitting down, and they're going to say, remember when you made this? Oh, my Lord. So it better be good. So I prayed as a kid, went in there, did my thing, and I came up with my Creole shrimp and grits. I used the seasonings that my mom taught me how to use, as well as prepared the shrimp. I made the grits, and then I made the layering and combination so that the flavorings would meld together. It's not you just make grits, shrimp and grits, and you just throw it together and then that's it. No, there's a whole process in really how to bring out the optimum of all that together. So I presented it to the family on Sunday, and it was a hit.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that was
Okay.
it, my brother. I was like, okay, it's on.
Okay. Okay. So being a Southern man and learning how to prepare all type of Southern cuisine, from the deep Southern roots, to the Creole style, to the French style, um, and mixing that food tasting in with jazz and percussions and wine. When did you notice that you were that guy that people really enjoyed what you prepared for them?
I'd say when I got into high school, uh, when I had my friends come over and they're like, "Oh man, I'm hungry." I said, "Well, I'll cook up something." So it started out pretty early in the high school years, and I would have all kinds of friends coming over to the house and hey, and they timed it usually when I was about to make something because I became every other week making the dishes and stuff for my own family. Um, and I became really creative in what I was doing. I didn't use the cookbooks. At that point, I knew what I needed to grab, what the items I needed to work with. So I'd ask some friends of mine, what's your favorite stuff? And they would say, hey, I like steak. And I said, well, I'm going to see if they notice the difference. So I got some liver instead. And I made some liver seasoned. It looked just like steak. And basically they sat down and they're eating it. Oh man, this is the best steak I ever had. And I'm like, it's liver. And they're like, no way, this cannot be liver. I say, here's the package right here. And so that was always a fun thing for me to do. And then the light bulb went inside and said, you know what? Um, there's a gift. There's a gift here that my mother had that I believe that I had. And that's when I started to believe that I was more than just someone that would follow a recipe, that I could create and actually be a creative cook. I didn't have in my mindset at that time that I was a chef because my definition was what I saw on TV was you had to go to these really fancy schools. You had to go through all these different, institutions. You have to graduate, have the diploma. And so I got curious. And so I looked up in the dictionary, what is a chef? And it said two things that pointed out. One, that one create the dishes that you make, that usually they're original, and the other is you command your kitchen. You know the preparations, you know what to do in that kitchen. Those are the two major things. And I said, well, hey, then that's when I started to believe I'm a chef. And that's what most people were starting to call me, even though I hadn't gone to the culinary school. They're like, hey, what's up, chef? And that stuck. And then later on, as an adult, and that was after I served in the military, and that's a whole other story. Cooking for all my compadres, and being able to come back, and that's where the legacy part started, and opened up the doors on really connecting the family relationships, the food, the music. Being from New Orleans, I have a lot of known and not so known musicians, as well as artists, as well as comedians, as well as filmmakers. So entertainment is a big part of my family legacy as well. And also I began to expand once I was in the service into the wines, what you had talked about earlier. That's when I really had great wine, was over in Europe. And then when I came back, I said, hey, I need to find this. And that's where the journey began, with me actually pairing all the dishes I made with those libations. So we're talking bourbons, we're talking wines, we're talking beers. But then I discovered the new thing, which was craft beers. That really was the light bulb. And from that, I started to cross over and started to cook with that. I figured if you cook it, you can take out the alcohol. And now that all those things become seasoning. And now you have a whole elevation, even more so. That's the secret sauce of where Legacy Chef does his thing, which is me, on a lot of the things that I make.
Okay. So that's interesting to me because upon me going to your website and looking at different foods and the craft beer as well as the high-end wine, and what I find so interesting as upon me looking at your dishes and going on your social media pages, the IPA beers that
Yes.
people drink all the time. I said, man, this seems like a dish that I can see a lot of business owners that own Fortune 500 companies having their IPA, eating some Chef Legacy food. So how does the IPA and your food go hand in hand? Because the IPA is a different type of tasting beer. It's not
Yeah.
for everyone. It's not for everyone, but those who love it, they really love it.
Yes. If you're going to, there's two types of things. If you're looking to just enjoy it with your meal, it will complement certain types of foods. If you're going to cook with it, there's certain types of foods that you need to cook with it. The properties of an IPA, if you ever drank it or you've heard about it, it's bitter. And that's because it has a hop flavor that's in the actual root of what that is. That's what brings for a craft beer, what makes it that IPA. And so if you think about seasoning and bitterness, that can really let you know what you can cook with and what you can't. But one of the things about craft beer and IPAs is that there's no roadmap. If you try to get a book out there or try to, say, hey, what beer goes with this if I cook with it, or if I'm pairing with it, if I can drink this beer with this type of foods, you're starting to see new books for that. But actually cooking with it is a whole other thing. And I've been doing that for years. With the IPAs, one of the things I like to use that with in cooking is if you have a very flavorful dish, but it's very spicy, and you're like, oh my God, this is so spicy. You can actually use the IPA to cut through that spice, leaving the warmth of that with not the kick that we usually get. And it will bring it down into a earthy, more, it depends on the type of food, but it'll bring it down to an herbal and earthy type of flavoring. And you still have the warmth, but now you don't have the burn. And so you're going to bring out more flavor from the actual ingredients in the meal by using it. And usually during my videos that I have, I tell you when to put it in. So it's all about timing, as I said before, preparation. You put it in too soon, you're going to get a whole other flavor. You put it in at the right time, that's the timing is everything. That'll bring it out for you. So it's a great territory. It's a great way of being able to explore with the foods that maybe you couldn't eat before, but you can, because now you're able to use that libation seasoning to take it to that next level.
Interesting theory. I love it. And so,
these are facts. These are things in the works.
okay. So upon you being from Orleans, as they said, Orleans have this great seafood cuisine where they make so many different things when it comes to the seafood. So what are some of your top dishes that people request, and maybe that they want you to cater when they hire you for an event? So how do you kind of, maneuver it all together and just give them a taste that they never experienced?
I believe that most people, they want something original and that it tastes good. If it's original and it tastes good, even if they expect it to be something simple and they're like, well, I know how that's going to taste. But then what you give them is those two other things that usually takes it to a whole other level. Just recently, I sat down with one of the largest vineyards in Michigan. And the owner, basically, I had a chat with him and said, hey, I'd like to drop by and I'd like to give you some samples of 3 things, just simple hors d'oeuvres of what I believe will complement and go really well with your wines, as well as your distilled drinks, because they also sell their own distilled drinks there too. And if you're wondering what distilled drinks is, that's bourbons, whiskeys, and vodkas. And then also they made ciders as well too, which had a property of alcohol in it. So I did 3 different types for them. And just to show you how creative it is, it might even sound simple, I did some fried zucchini. I did a fried bell pepper ring. So think of, instead of onion rings, think of bell pepper rings. And I also did fried green tomatoes, but it was the Creole style. So it was all about the crunch and the actual breading seasoning, which is something that I developed over the years so that it is crunched on the outside, but it keeps everything moist on the inside. Preparation of each of those 3 different items is specially done. So that way, what you think about is going to be runny. No, it's not. It was crisp. It was crisp and it held in the flavor and the moisture on all things. So I brought all 3 of those items to the actual winery. We met. We had flights of the different styles of the libations, and they all they tasted it. He could not get enough of the zucchini. He's like, I can't believe this. I've had fried zucchini before. I've never tasted it like this. What did you do? And I said, well, I took his own wine, which was a cherry style wine, and I made that and marinated it in with the actual zucchini. And then, of course, with the actual process of what I did, what it tasted like to him was a burst of cherry, but also he got the full taste of the Creole seasoning that came on afterwards that allowed him to have that aftertaste along with it. He said, I've never tasted anything like this. This is amazing. And I said, well, that's what libations will do for your food. It allows you to be able to elevate it in so many different ways. So from that, we're working on 3 special dates for private events coming up in October, where I'll be doing those 3 items which were specially requested, was those 3. So that's just one example, but I've done many other different types of show and see and taste times with individuals, because it is an untapped territory, and it works better when you actually taste it and when you see it. So that's why I do the videos, and I walk people through so they can actually get a taste from their home and be able to do it. And then I also can do it at private events that I'm beginning to get more and more booked on as well.
Now, that sounds very elegant, classy, spectacular, and it sounds like a hors d'oeuvre and at a wine venue where, you can really meet somebody that pique your interest, when you're a male and you there. And so that brings up another question, what did the ladies tell you? Because they always say that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. So, and I find it so, because, I'm a Southern boy and I can cook. So
Oh yeah.
I find it so in my years on this earth, a male that can cook, it's like he's sort of like BB King with the guitar. they love him for life. You know what I mean? So how is that for you when women actually taste your food? And you know, the taste buds can be something tricky, but if they can taste it from another experience, but they haven't experienced this type of taste before, and they want more. They want to know more about you. Don't try to cook like that. Where did you learn that from? Like, don't you know that you can throw a whole event at a woman's empowerment, and they gonna just keep paying you and doing events here and there? And so, what are their conversations with you, the females?
Well, first of all, a lot of them are shocked because, I'm I'm a guy. That I'm not trying to be stereotyped, but it's like that guy. He's kind of, if you see me, I'm ex-military guy, so I'm not the guy that you would probably look at and say, well, that guy's a chef. He can really cook. It's like, oh, okay, he's maybe a little bit more athletic. He's probably in this way. But then as I begin to start to speak, and when I do cook, there's a conversation that takes place. If I'm presenting it to someone to have, I said, try this. And then it's like, well, what's in it? That's usually the first thing that goes, well, what's in it? And it has, and I'll mention the three things that pique people's interest. So if it is, coconut or cherry, or if it's Creole seasoned, or if it's Southern, that's what I will say. And they're like, oh, okay. All right, I'll try it. And so they'll take a nibble, and then the nibble, you see the eyebrow go up. And it's like, I was like, and I'm going like this. I said, well, you can take a bigger bite if you like. And then usually they will. And then it's on from that point. And it's like the rest are watching the other. There's usually the one that's the adventurous one. And then the rest will be watching, and they're like, and she's like, oh, you guys don't want none of this. I'll just go ahead and take it. And that's when they usually jump in and they start grabbing, and they'll taste, oh, this is good. What did you do? And so they'll be asking me questions about things, and I'll tell them. I'm like, hey, it's, as you well know, it's not always, nothing's created new under the sun. It's just how you do it. And you can create some things, but it's all through the experiences that you have in your life. So I make what I do a culinary of the story of their legacy. So I'll ask them the question. It's like, what's some of the dishes that you've cooked? And what's your favorite thing? What's your thing that you do? Why is it special? I said, well, this is why this specific dish is special. And that's what I will tell them. And so there's now an emotional connection with food. And as you know, as well as most of us, emotional connections, when you connect with your food, that's what makes it your favorite food. And that it's the memories, it's the connection of maybe this reminded you of something that your mother did or your father made for you, or that special person could be that loved one that in your life that's doing it. So that was one of the things that my mom told me, because they said, oh, you must not be single. If you cook this good, you must not be single. I said, matter of fact, I am not. I say, but that was a promise that my mother gave me. My mother said, this is the one thing you're able to cook, you will definitely be married. Like, you will definitely be married.
Right.
And it will be a long one, because the way to a woman's heart as well as to a man's heart is in the kitchen. And so that was something that kind of interested me as I started to become more interested in the other side of the world of women, as well as just being able to find the right one. So that was also a great thing too. That can help you find the right one. And that was one of the things my mother said as well. Oh, I just saw my cousin over there saying hello at the bottom of the screen. So
Yes,
I
yes,
got
yes.
I got to give her a little shout out. All right, cuz.
Thank you. Thank you for being. This has happened, she, um, to, she's a, definitely go, and let's talk about ingredients, because I used to see my granny do a lot of different, um, uh, seaweed, parsley, lunch, lemon, lime zest, herb zest, and snacky and field things out the market like that. Do you still use some of those country ingredients? It's your
I just heard that you asked a question, but I'm sorry I didn't catch the full part of it.
okay. So that you may go to mother, grandmother, as far as and seaweed and cilantro and the lemons and the orange zest and things. Do you use some of those country ingredients that we taught you? Um,
I apologize. I did not get the full translation on that.
so with the way you cook now, you still use some of those country ingredients that you learned from your mother.
Oh, okay. That's always a big part. Though there's a time where you graduate, there are certain techniques and things that your parents do, but one of the key things that my mother always said was make it your own. So at this point in life, I'm making a lot of things my own. There are certain things that has the basics, and some of the things of what I learned and was passed on to me through my mom. Though I've taken it to even a further level, and I've known this at times because I've made things for her, rest her soul. But I made things for her in the past where she said, this is good. This is great, which means that it's something new for her. And then she would ask me, she would say, um, did you do this? Or did you do that? And I said, no, mom, I actually did this totally different. And she's like, all right now. And so that was her way of telling me that I've created something and made it my own. And so that made her smile very deeply. So a lot of my cooking and what I do is part of my love language. Um, and I don't mean like I want to marry you. I mean like it's my appreciation, it's my heart to give to so many of my friends and those that are dear to me and people who I've met and that I'd like to get to know. They can learn a lot about me through the things that I do in cooking. I've done many different things unofficially by people inviting me over, and as friends, you bring your dish over there, and I would do that, and that would get cleaned out in 2.9 seconds, and then everybody be wondering, where did you go? I mean, how did you make this? Can you tell me the recipe? All those different things, and that gives me an opportunity to share my story and to talk about those that came before me, as well as what I took it to in the current moment, and where I would like to continue to go with the food that I make. So it's a great thing to be able to use your talents that God has given you to be able to really encourage so many others. And that's the commitment, and that's the part that I have in my heart that I really love to do. And so I'm doing it.
Right. And so I just want to ask you, just for the people not from Orleans, like myself, South Carolinians, and people from Georgia and Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee, and everybody that's not from Orleans, we want to know, how in the hell do y'all make y'all gumbo taste like?
Yeah, one of the things that I love about gumbo, everybody says that theirs may or may not be the best, but it has its own unique ways. And so when I try different gumbos, and they are different in certain aspects, but they do have some basic things that are key in making the gumbo. And one is, you've got to use the seasoning from New Orleans. I don't mean you buy it online. I'm talking you actually physically have to go to New Orleans to get it, because that's part of the state. The state is, when they ship their stuff outside the state, it doesn't taste the same. Everybody who's listening, they know, they're like, oh no, there's something that's missing. It doesn't taste the same. But when you go there and you buy it there in the state, then when you make it, it's a whole other realm. So you can go on any cookbook, you'll see recipes for gumbo. But that's a key recipe for each family. Each family has its own gatekeeping recipe for gumbo. And that's the fun part, because you can taste one family's gumbo and you can taste another. And that's the judge. You can say at that point, I like this one. And usually both of them are excellent, but you'll learn that they did something different. And so you can have that conversation, and you can elevate those specific types of gumbo dishes if they want you to. Some of those are secret recipes that will never, ever be told to nobody else except for only the family members or the gatekeepers, the ones that really know the deep secret recipe of that. So it's a fun thing, and we love it. It's one of our staple dishes. When you say gumbo, you're not thinking about anywhere else but New Orleans. That's where that goes. Even if you're from the other states, you got it. That's okay. But that's our cornerstone. So, and we like to stick to that.
You know, I had a friend that's from Baton Rouge, and one of my friends is from, I think, is St. Charles down there in Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
and their family is from Orleans. And I was like, man, he was like, I'm gonna show you something, because at the time I was living in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's
Okay.
like, I want you to taste this, but he said, you can't be over here while I cook it. I was like, what? He was like, nah, bro. He was like, he was like, this is my great granny's recipe. Man, no. He was like, but when it's done, I give you a call. And so, as he invite the friends over, and he got the coolers of beer and the wine, and some hors d'oeuvres out, and then he get these bowls out, and I said, I naturally say ladies first. He said, he nudged my shoulder, right? He's like, are you sure you want to do this, man?
You ain't gonna
Like
get
maybe you should have called and told me to put you some up in the refrigerator or something, man. He said, because he said, when they taste this, and listen, man, I will tell you this, it was like 7 or 8 ladies that stayed around his pot. Like, it's like, what? Do I need to bring Suge Knight in here to get some gumbo? Like, it was ridiculous, man. It was ridiculous. I was like, he was like, man, I got you, bro. I put you something in the refrigerator. Cause I know what I did, and asked me to make it all the time. Pay me real for it. It's like, man, it's something about that. A person from Louisiana that know how to make that gumbo, man. It's like nothing you've ever. It's like Philly in their cheesesteak. You know what I mean? So if a person has been from a person from Philadelphia been making those cheesesteaks their whole lives, man, it's ingredients. Like, you know, everybody know Philly got the best cheesesteaks and the best homes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the gumbo. So as you cook in the military now, there's people from all over the world in the military. And so when they find out that you can cook, you know, and cook very, very well, very great, like, what was that experience for you in the military?
There were those that really, in the military, there were two different types. There were the ones that were not from the South and the people who were, who weren't from the South and the people who were. And so the people who weren't from the South, you know, it was a little bit more easier to impress them because the seasonings were different. It was something they've never had before, so they loved it. Then you had the ones from the South, which is like, okay, now you're going to have to show me something. I remember what I said earlier, show me something. That's what it was. They took a bite. Oh man, this is great. And then they asked me about my family. And I think that's what did it. I said, not only because of the legacy, the things that I've learned from my mother, I told them about that. And they said, do you have any family that has restaurants? I mean, you should have a restaurant. I said, well, we actually do. And so I told them the story about that and how my mother taught one of her younger cousins, some of the recipes, and that person taught her son, and her son ended up opening up the restaurant that was one of the world famous restaurants there in New Orleans, which is the Praline Connection. They've been in business for over 60 years. But recently that has changed ownership hands. So they're now just on the board of directors. So it's no longer the legendary spot of where it used to be right there on Frenchman Street. We call that Little Bourbon Street. Those of you who are online, you know what I'm talking about. Down there in New Orleans, they're probably in connection. So, but then also offshoots of other family members, such as the Barrow Catfish, which is really world famous there. That's open and still there in New Orleans. And then also recently, my cousin who passed, that was Loretta Harrison. And that's through direct relationship through my mother's line. And she was known as the Queen of Pralines in New Orleans. And she passed away, and Patti LaBelle did a movie about her life story. So the recipe for those pralines and all that, I'm one of the gatekeepers of that too as well, along with a few other of my cousins. But that's my lineage. So therefore, when I'm cooking and I explain that to those guys, not about the other part with my cousin, but about my mother, that clicked very well because they knew through their family that those connections, generational wise, and those recipes being passed down, those family secrets, that where that came from, they're like, oh yeah, okay. So I became the guy when I cooked. They all came over to where I was at, and they all kept asking me during that time, man, if you ever open up anything, I'm there. And so that was a whole other different story in life of why I didn't at that time. But now is a whole new different story. I'm doing things creatively so that others can share in what it is that I'm doing. And, we have recipes and things that we're talking about to be able to get out to the masses so that people can share and do that. I believe that legacies at certain times need to be shared. And after COVID, that opens up a whole lot of doors of being able to what used to be closed doors and sharing. Now is the time to open up and be able to pass those things on and be able to have somebody else make it their own.
Okay. Okay. So with that being said, I'm hoping that I'll be able to order some seeds from you as well. It sounds like you need online seasons if you don't already have them. And I'm hoping, that I'll be seeing you online, seeing your public put it out, where, there's a wine seed that's into the public. Well, come in, see you in action and how, kind of embrace the tasting of certain wines.
I'm not quite certain. Were you thinking about how, if I was looking to package it into a product of some sort where people can get it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I believe because of, just the way we have the world environment now, and then the need for people to wanting to do that they definitely want to do something where they can possibly order it, get it, and then they can kind of have a base to where they can start with and then move forward to making it their own. That's usually what most of, it's not new under the sun that's happening. I believe what I'm looking to do for that is sometimes it's when you get a package and then you do it, but you don't have the guidance of somebody actually showing it to you first. That can be a little disheartening when you make it and it doesn't taste the way you thought it was going to. So I'm doing a combination. That's what the videos are for. When you watch those, it's a library. I make the series, I just add to those. It is subscription. So you pay one little price and it doesn't lock you in for a whole year, but just a little bit for just a short period of time where you can have access to the library. And I add to that. And so you can pick the different things that you like as I'm cooking in my kitchen. I'm not bringing out all the different chef culinary things that, you got to spend a whole bunch of money, but typically the things that you would have in your own kitchen, and be able to show different techniques as well as I'm doing it naturally. I have music that's playing in the background. That's where the music comes in. Jazz and R&B music, the things that I grew up with. So I'm sorry. I might throw in something that might, you may or may not like, but that's what I like. So I'm going to put that in. So I invite you to put your own music as you're cooking that inspires you as well. But I show as you can have fun with cooking. And that's been the biggest thing. Most people, the reason why they don't want to cook is because it's not fun to them. It's not something that they think that they would enjoy. It's too much work. I'd rather just go out and buy and do and just have somebody else do it. But if you can be shown that you can do something and enjoy doing that one or two things, then that's something that you can pass on to your friends, your kids, your own legacy. And so that's really the biggest goal that I have, is to be able to create those new and build bridges and relationships between families through the foods that we make. It's a great way, as well as you probably well know, you shared earlier about the connections we have with our parents, our uncles, our family members, our friends, and usually it's surrounded by food, music, and a lot of talk.
Yes, of course. So Chef, before we get out of here, can you tell people how they can follow you, how they can find you, and if you have any up and coming events that you want the audience to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me is in my own personal website that I designed so that it makes it easy for you to find me and to be able to see the things that I'm doing in music, food, and comedy, all kinds of stuff all rolled into one, and my videos to watch if you'd like for you to be able to make and follow along with the things that I'm cooking. And that's at www.tastethecraft.net, not .com, but nothing but the net. So www.tastethecraft.net.
All right, you heard it first on the Chatterbox with George truly, King Jacob, Vicent Moore, the legacy chef, straight from New Orleans. And just want to say shout out to his publicist, Ms. Desirae Benson. And if you want to find out more, contact her. You want to get in contact with him, contact her, and just be on the lookout for all the press that's coming out on the legacy chef. Until next time, peace, blessings, and everybody stay tuned for the messages, because we will have him back again. Good night.
Good night.